Yeah, you know me. Besides having wild sex orgies, drinking booze all night long, stuffing yourself with food, and then puking it all up, Mr. Carl says, pausing for a beat, the Greeks were really good at math. Yeah, you'd wake up in a sandbox, completely hungover, drawing triangles in the sand, until eventually those angles in the triangles began to make some fucking sense. There isn't a kid in the classroom that isn't focused on Carl as he waves his arms behind his podium. His eyes are owlish behind his glasses, and despite everything, I feel a terrible attraction. It draws me here, taking notes in the back on the premise of helping my students later on in directed studies. I distract myself by reading his podium, which has a rash of stickers plastered on it, the highest up reading, "May the net force be with you." A pen dangles between my fingers. And this, Carl says, drawing a skewered circle with a 26-degree tilt on the whiteboard, is Earth. Carl's magnified eyes fill his glasses as he stares down at us. In space, he adds with a wicked grin, and some kid mouths, duh. Titters erupt, Carl among them. He's got to be 45 and still has a full head of hair. And the axis is tilted like God skewered the freaking thing, like a huge earth shish kebab. Carl goes into a spiel about the axial tilt being the reason for the seasons. Then he switches gears. Did you know that teachers have these long meetings sometimes? And they're really just wild orgies? Ha! Bet you didn't know that. And the librarian, Mrs. Dutton, wow. Oh, Renee, did you just throw up a little in your mouth like this? Carl tips forward on his toes and makes a gagging noise, then mimes wiping his mouth. You have to be a good pretender as a teacher. You have to be, because you're working with something bigger than yourself by far, and nobody really cares if you have cramps, and they especially don't need to know if you stayed up late the night before, and it's only Tuesday. As a resource specialist in the clique called the Special Ed Teachers, I am already loved or abhorred. One afternoon, I go into the faculty lounge during lunchtime where people are flopped upon couches or huddled on chairs, microwaving leftovers, unwrapping bologna sandwiches, cracking open a Diet Coke, stirring a yo play. One English teacher, known in side gossip as the woman with lots of cats and no husband, tells me that one of our shared students, a rough teen girl who I'm quite close with, has the brain the size of a flea. I'm taken back by this comment. The woman laughs and I see tuna fish and wheat bread in her craw. Really, she says, that girl. And I tune her voice out and think, I'll never put another kid in her English class as long as I work here. And here comes Mr. Franklin, the goofy and effeminate U.S. history teacher. He's a rare treat in the faculty room, about as infrequent a visitor as myself. Hi guys, he says. His voice reminds the students of the teacher on South Park who carries a hand puppet. The ladies look around. Mr. Franklin is the only guy. The ladies say hello and then fall back into their suddenly private conversations. Mr. Franklin announces he's going to have kayak races in the swimming pool for Earth Day. And would anyone like to get involved? His gaze locks with mine, and I see joy in his expression. We've taken students on a camping trip together a year ago, a trip where all the luggage flew off the van while zooming up the highway. I shake my head, no thanks. He shrugs, leaves a flyer, and heads out. The bell rings, and 800 pairs of shoes patter in the hallway on the other side of the wall. I rise slowly. I don't have directed studies class to teach this next period. Ever since the administration decided to shake things up in the special education department, we have to push into a mainstream class at least one period a day. I eat one last bite of lunch, then head out to a physics class that I can't seem to drop. Hey, you down with OPP? Carl sings, then stops suddenly when he realizes his audience has a blank stare. What? You don't know that song? Come on. The kids titter. Carl looks at me. You, Miss Hahn. You know the lyrics, right? You remember 90s hip-hop? He looks like Satan smiling, a lascivious grin. You down with OPP? My heart thumps. attention to me. Heads turn, and I can almost see their thoughts, their curiosity as to why I'm in their room, like some adult being let back into high school to finish her diploma. 90% of the kids here don't know anything about special education. Carl takes on a falsetto. You down with OPP? I sing back, small voice, you know me. Carl claps and makes a sound, a triumphant holler grunt that I validated his ranting. He commands the class's attention. That's other people's pussy hovered on the edge of his lips. Let's just say property. He's crazy. If the principal could see him now, how could he not get fired? I wonder if he's always like this, and how he's taught for so many years without the kids telling on him. Not one kid. Now he laughs at them. Ha ha, he cries, shaking his head. You're all too young. He swivels back to the whiteboard and onwards with his soliloquy on how the Greeks figured out the radius of the earth. I love going home, Carl tells his physics class, and some of the students nod. I love it, he cries, like a starving man who walks through the desert to discover a cafe serving up coffee and buttermilk biscuits and scrambled eggs with green onions and hot sauce. He cocks a wild eyebrow and pounds his podium. You know why? Why? Come a few replies. Carl spins around and clasps his hands under his chin. Because I'm making sweet, sweet love. Batting his eyelashes to collective laughter. He opens his eyes and fixes a stare upon us. To my wife, of course, he clarifies. He points at a kid. And you thought I meant my dog. He laughs, and we laugh. Only some of the kids have ever seen Carl's wife, but her description was well circulated until we knew she wasn't just any old marm of an English teacher, who doesn't teach at our school, by the way, but a tall, leggy blonde with big kahongas that Carl undoubtedly milks like a desperate cat. We're making a baby, Carl tells us, and it's wonderful trying to accomplish the task. There are mixed reactions. The salivating kids who squelch hard-ons under a table, the virginal ones who hold their breath, and the virile ones, or the virile type of both sexes who laugh knowingly. But I'm doggone tired, Carl huffs, drawing the back of his hairy hand across his forehead. He flips on the switch for the overhead projector. Okay, warm-ups. Carl wants us to go over significant figures. More math, my bane. Significant figures are used by scientists to show how precise they've measured something. We finish a set of conversion problems where we determine such trivia as how many seconds there are in a year. Do you really want to know? There are 31,536,000 seconds in a year. Or how many feet per second a car traveling 55 miles per hour would travel, which would be 81 feet per second. I say we, but it's not me. I'm a teacher. I just look on while the kids work. We have this lab to show you the importance of significant digits. Carl goes to a box of supplies close to me. I can smell his body, his sweat and clothing detergent, and it's wonderful. He looks at me, his back to the kids, and winks. Turning to the class with a ball of twine held high, he announces, "You're going to measure the radius of your head." How the hell? Well, with measuring the circumference first, of course. He strides back to the whiteboard and scribbles C equals 2 pi r. Then he goes to the nearest girl, a quiet one with braces and a long ponytail, and wraps the twine around her head. "What a perfectly round head you have," he says, then laughs. "Just kidding." He returns to the box of goodies, wiggling his eyebrows at me, and pulls out a couple of wooden blocks. He is so close. I see the hairs in his nose sticking out in blonde highlights from the slanting sun through the windows. He presses a block against his big nose and breathes in the smell of freshly cut pine. He breathes out a devious expression on his face. "You're going to measure the volume of a piece of wood. Pick any, they're all different." He waves a couple in the air, then stops and looks at me. "I don't know about you, Miss Hahn, but when I do this," he smiles, "I like to do the head first. then go for the wood. How about you? I am dumbfounded, caught in the spotlight. If any students ever wondered why I was here in the back of their classroom, they really are wondering now. I laugh along with some of the kids. I can't think of a response except to make a face, which think, well, shit, that's the way I like it too, Carl. Uh-oh, he says, clapping a hairy hand over his chin. Was that sexual harassment? My cheeks burn. No, I stammer, it's okay. He laughs at his own scenario and strides across the room back to the Packard podium. My wife is pregnant, Carl hollers, eyes near popping out of his head. Sweet Jesus, we're gonna have a baby. The thought is appalling, just for a moment, and I hope it won't be a girl child. Someone starts clapping. The sound is infectious, spreading until the room is a din of congratulatory excess. Carl grins and eats it up like an In-N-Out wild-style burger, onions and special sauce all over the place. Thank you, he says, and gives a look that tells us he loves us. If eyes could smile, he has them. I can finally take a night off. Carl is at his podium, looking out of sorts when we squeeze through the door and into our chairs, not giving us a hello or a hairy handshake or commenting on someone's hairdo. I had a long night last night, he tells us. Visions instantly pop up of him doing his wife doggy style, both of them howling through the hours. We had a miscarriage, he says. My baby died. Carl says as he takes off his greasy glasses and pulls the back of a monkeyish hand across his eyelids. He starts crying, a shoulder-shaking, hiccuping scene. The fluorescent lights sizzle in the rectangular cases overhead. I hear a student whispering and another says she's sorry. Most of the students look awkward. I see a couple faces turn to me as if, by being the other adult in the classroom, I know what to do. Carl is in his own world as ever, both here and far away. He repeats himself, then covers his face and groans. I am frozen, wishing he'd talk about the laws of motion or tangential velocity or action-reaction forces in a collision. I have no idea what will come next. Carl looks up, his eyes shot red and explosive veins, his lips downturned and gummy. His hands with their spatula fingertips and hairy knuckles rub the top of the podium ceaselessly.